Hello everyone and welcome to another video. So today's video is going to be my TBR video for the month of December. So let's get started. First of all, I want to mention the readathon that I'm taking place in the month of December. And the readathon that I'm taking part in December is Lightfall Old Favor Pass. This is part of the Magical Readathon hosted by G over at Book Roast. I'll link the announcement video to this part of the readathon down below, but it's running for about a full week plus the 2 weekends that it starts beginning and end at, where essentially we travel to this Old Favor Pass, which is a sort of like market shop, Christmas market that's open for this week, and in order to enter the shop and get something from it, we have to of course read a book that fits with the certain genre that the store is favored. So I have all the stores written down that I at least know that I want to try and hit. We'll probably hit a few of these, but who knows? A lot of these books work for multiple prompts. So let's get into it. I'm actually going to be talking about first the ebooks that I plan on reading this month, and then we'll get into the physical stack here in front of me. So the first ebook that I chose is to fulfill the prompt for Gloom for Poke Fun, which is to read a dark book. And for this, I'm currently reading this book. I'm currently reading Master of Sorrows by Justin T. Call. This is his first book in a villain origin story. We follow our main character, Anev. We're growing up with him, so it's a Bildungsroman sort of story. And he lives in this town where he is a student of the academy. And in this world, there are these artifacts, magical artifacts, and his job and his, learn and grow, his title role is to essentially recover these artifacts and then bring them back. But we actually find out that Anev actually has a disability, and with this disability he can actually detect the magic in these magical artifacts, and some of them are actually not used for good, so it's dark. So I don't know how long this book series is going to be, but this is the first book, and I'm about 60% in at the time of filming this, and I'm really enjoying it so far. The next ebook that I am going to be reading is to fulfill the prompt of Slow Bro, and that is, of course, to read a slow book, or a book that's fairly slow-paced. And for this, I'm going to be reading Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is R.F. Kuang. This is the author of the Poppy War trilogy. This is her first sort of adult story. In this, we follow our boy named Robin Sloan, who's from a rundown Middle Eastern Asian country who has been sick with, I believe it's cholera. And he actually gets chosen and adopted by this professor over at Oxford. And he is essentially trying to train Robin in all these different languages, and for him to grow up and become a member of the School of Oxford and study there into their sort of language transcription program, and essentially find out that what they do helps run the city of Oxford and the city of London and the age of the time we're living, but it's hurting the countries that he lives in. And I think he decides to probably rebel against Oxford. So I'm really looking forward to reading this book. I've heard from a lot of people that it's very descriptive. We may get a physical copy later if I end up really enjoying this book. But I read the first Poppy War book on ebook, and I decided to read Babel by R.F. Kuang on ebook as well. The third ebook is going to be fulfilling the prompt of Clefable, and that is to read a retelling. And for this, I'm going to be reading Cersei by Madeline Miller. At the time of filming this video, I'm about actually 40% into it. I started it back in November, and it was actually on my November TBR, but I put it down because I wasn't really feeling it at the time, but I'm planning on finishing it this month. It's about the siren, Cersei from the Greek myth and Greek mythology retelling. It is sort of also an Odyssey retelling, so it's the story of the Odyssey. I read The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller last year in 2021 and really enjoyed it. So I'm hoping as we get further into the story and I get really used to the characters, I'm hoping to really like this book by her as well. The next book is going to be fulfilling the prompt of Ivy Soar, and that is to read a book with plants on the cover. And for this, I plan on reading Small Spaces by Catherine Arden. This is the first book in her Small Spaces quartet. It's essentially a middle grade horror / story. I did earlier this year try out Catherine Arden's Winter Night trilogy, The Veil Nightingale. I tried out that series, and I have softened after it for now. Sort of like Cersei, I kind of wasn't feeling at the time, and my mental health sort of tanked. Maybe potentially we'll pick that book up again in 2023. But I'm actually hoping I may like her Small Spaces series more. As I liked Catherine Arden's writing style, what I've read so far in The Veil Nightingale. I just think it may be more suited better for a middle grade audience and maybe better if it's written in a horror style. So I'm hoping to really like Small Spaces by Catherine Arden. And then the last ebook that I plan on reading is to fill the prompt of Jinx, which is a reread. And for this, I'm going to be rereading The Extraordinaries by T.J. Klune. I actually started this reread of this book back in June in preparation for Heatwave, which came out in July. The third and final book in his Extraordinary series. I was planning on reading it also for Whatever-a-thon because it's queer, but I had other projects that sort of got in the way, and I didn't have enough time to finish it. I got it to about 50%, but it's a reread for me, so it's fine. I just plan on finishing the reread of that book this year. I should have done it in June, but we'll just finish it now. I've already read it once before. I know it's going to be a 5-star. So, yeah, we will reread The Extraordinaries by T.J. Klune, hopefully in December. And then these next books are all going to be physical reads. We're planning on, for my TBRs, we're planning on doing at least 4 to 5 ebooks, 4 to 5 physical books, and then whatever books I end up don't finishing in the month of, in that month will roll over to the next. So my TBR will essentially grow every month by probably about 4 to 5 books. And the other, what I don't finish, we will move over into the previous months. So you'll understand in 2023 when I'm bringing back my TBR game. My TBR game is going to probably choose some of the other books and the books that I don't end up finishing. The first physical read is to fulfill the prompt of Kabutops, which is to read a TBR veteran. And this book has been on your TBR for the longest. And the book, actually, at the time filming this, that I've had on my TBR for about a year, is Beartown by Frederick Bachman. Frederick Bachman is the author of A Man Called Ove. I really liked A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. And this sounds like it might sort of be more up my alley. I will read you guys the blurb, because this is the first book in a series. Says, people say Beartown is finished. A tiny community nestled deep in the forest. It is slowly losing ground to the ever-encroaching trees. But down by the lake stands an old ice rink, built generations ago by the working men who founded this town. And that ice rink is the reason people in Beartown believe tomorrow will be better than today. Their junior ice hockey team is about to compete in the national semifinals, and they actually have a shot at winning. All the hopes and dreams of this place now rest on the shoulders of a handful of teenage boys. Victory would send star player Kevin on to a brilliant professional future in the NHL. It would mean everything to Mott, a scrawny 15-year-old treated like an outcast everywhere but on the ice. And it would justify the choice that Peter, the team's general manager, and his wife Kira, made to return made to return to his hometown and raise their children in this beautiful but isolated place. Being responsible for the hopes of an entire town is a heavy burden, and the semifinal match is the catalyst for a violent act that will leave a young girl traumatized and a town in turmoil. Here is a story no one wants to believe, since doing so would mean the end of the dream. Accusations are made, and like ripples on a pond, they travel through all of Beartown, leaving no resident unaffected. Sounds sort of like a contemporary mystery thriller, which I can get down by. His third and final book in this trilogy came out earlier this year, so I'm hoping to start this, and I hope I actually like it, as I would like to continue more with Frederick Beckman's work. Next prompt is the prompt of Horsey, which is to read a book with LGBTQ plus representation, and for that I'm going to be reading Loveless by Alice Oseman. This is one of Alice Oseman's standalone novels. I don't know, she had already written, actually, Heartstopper before reading this book. This book was published in 2020, so she actually already wrote Heartstopper before writing this. I've heard this book has asexual representation in it, and I've never actually read a book with asexual representation before, so I'm really, really forward to looking at this one. It was all sinking in. I never had a crush on anyone. No boys, no girls, not a single person I'd ever met. What did that mean? Georgia has never been in love, never kissed anyone, never even had a crush, but as a fanfic-obsessed romantic, she's sure he'll find her person one day. As she starts university, Georgia makes a plan to find her love, but when her actions wreak havoc among her friends, she questions why romance seems so easy for other people, yet not for her. With new terms thrown at her, asexual and aromantic, Georgia is more uncertain about her feelings than ever. Is she destined to remain loveless, or has she been looking for the wrong thing all along? So yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading this book. And I was born for this. I've actually never read of Alice Wilson's work. I've also never read Nick and Charlie in this winter, but I plan on definitely doing so. But yeah, I'm looking forward to reading this book. The next prompt is Kangas Khan, and that is to read a book with present parents. And for that, I'm going to be reading The Trials of Apollo by Rick Riordan, the first book being The Hidden Oracle. So this is another one of Rick Riordan's demigod middle grade YA fantasy series centered around like the world of his Percy Jackson book series. Essentially, in this series, we follow the Greek god Apollo, who has been sent down to Earth as a demigod instead of an actual god. And it's him kind of coming to terms with being an actual demigod instead of a god, and him learning how to prove himself in order to be a god again. I'll read you guys the blurb. Your fault, Apollo, your punishment. My father's voice still rings in my ears. Can you believe Zeus blamed me for the gods' battle of Gaia? Just because the Earth goddess duped one of my progeny, Octavian, into plunging the Greek and Roman demigods into a civil war that nearly destroyed human civilization. I ask you how was that my fault? Now I'm cast out of Olympus in the form of a 16-year-old mortal boy, acting in all. Sadly, I've been punished this way before. I know I will face many trials and hardships. I can only hope that if I suffer through them and prove myself worthy, Father will forgive me and allow me to become a god again. This time my situation seems much more dangerous. One of my ancient adversaries knows I am here and is having me followed. The Oracle of Delphi remains dark, unable to issue prophecies. Most embarrassing of all, I am bound to serve a demigod street urchin who defends himself by throwing garden fruit. Zeus could not possibly expect me to fix the Oracle problem by myself, not in my present weak condition. It's time for me to drop in on Camp Half-Blood, where I might find some talented heroes to help. No doubt they will welcome me as a celebrity. They will bring me holy offerings like petaled grapes, Oreos, and oh gods, perhaps even bacon. Yes, if I survive this, I really must write an ode to the power of bacon. So yes, this is a book series by Greek Daddy Rick Riordan. I have read his, of course, Percy Jackson series, and I have also read his Heroes of Olympus series, i.e. what falls after this, and actually this falls after that, so I am free to continue and read this series. I really don't think with this one you can start it beforehand, before you read Heroes of Olympus, but I think it's best with Rick Riordan's works to at least with his books set in the Percy Jackson world, go in publication order. So it would mean I read this book. I'm really looking forward to Present Parents. I'm not really certain of, but it does feature Greek god and goddesses, and if you're a demigod, those are your parents. So it does fulfill the parent prompt. The next prompt is going to be fulfilling the prompt for Arbok, and that is to read a book with suspicious characters, and for that I'm going to be reading Ordinary Monsters by James Van Miro. At the time of filming this, I've actually already read this. I've read at least about half of this book. We're making some decent progress in this. I decided to start this book before December actually started, just because it's probably the biggest book on my TBR at like 658 pages. So I figured I should start this. I'm actually really enjoying this book so far, so I'll read you guys the blurb. It's England, 1882. In Victorian London, two children with mysterious powers are hunted by a figure of darkness, a man made of smoke. 16-year-old Charlie Ovid, despite a brutal childhood in Mississippi, doesn't have a scar on him. His body heals itself whether he wants it to or not. Marlowe, a foundling from a railway freight car, shines with a strange bluish light. He can melt or mend flesh. When a jaded female detective is recruited to escort them to safety, all three begin a journey into the nature of difference and belonging and the shadowy edges of the monstrous. Wolf also the story of wonder and betrayal, from the gaslit streets of London and the wooden theaters of Meiji area Tokyo to an eerie estate outside Edinburgh, where other children with gifts, the talents, have been gathered. There, the world of the dead and the world of the living threaten to collide. And a secret in the Institute unfurl. Marlowe, Charlie, and the rest of the talents will discover the truth about their abilities and the nature of what is stalking them, that the world's worst monsters sometimes come bearing the sweetest gifts. So yeah, suspicious characters. There is definitely a villain in this story, but I think it's more or less like a sort of like villain origin story. Possibly, sort of. I'm really liking it so far. The characters do seem quite actually really suspicious with what the ham people so far of the institute. They're a little suspicious, so I'm really looking forward to continuing with this book. And finally, the last book on my TBR is the book on my TBR only to fulfill one of the prompts for Lightfall. And that's to read a sci-fi, and for that I've chosen Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in his Skyward series. I have read Mistborn, which is one of his adult fantasy series, and I figured I'd give his YA series a try, as I do want to read Brandon Sanderson's entire Cosmia, so I figured I need to read this book as well. Spence's world has been under attack for decades. Now pilots are the heroes of what's left of the human race, and becoming one has always been Spence's dream. Since she was a little girl, she has imagined soaring skyward and proving her bravery. But her fate is intertwined with her father's, a pilot himself who was killed years ago when he abruptly deserted his team, leaving Spencer the daughter of a coward. Her chances of attending flight school slim to none. No one will let Spencer forget what her father did, yet fate works in mysterious ways. Flight school might be a long shot, but she is determined to fly. And an accidental discovery in a long-forgotten cavern might just provide her with a way to claim the stars. So, sounds like a typical, YA fantasy series, but more set in space. I have read 2 of the Illuminate Files by Aiden Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, and I like the sci-fi in that, so I'm really looking forward to giving Skyward by Brandon Sanderson a shot. So, let's go over at least the general prompts for the readathon. I am participating in Lightfall Old Favorite Past. There are a bunch of different places you can visit. I have 5 of them listed here for at least the book prompts. So we have Wallace's Wonderful Winter Wanimals, and that is essentially to read a fantasy book. You can tell by my TBR most of those books are fantasy. Hidden Oracle, Ordinary Monsters, Small Spaces, Circe, Babel, and Master of Sorrows are all fantasy books. Or at least general fantasy books. So that was those prompts. Prompt number 2, Smith and Friends and Sons, Arcane Goods and Such, is to read a contemporary. I have 2, Beartown by Fred Freckman is a contemporary book, and Love is by Alice Oseman is a contemporary book as well. 3, The Old Trials Bookstore is to read a horror. I don't really like horror books that much, but... Or is it thriller? Mystery thriller. One's mystery thriller and one's horror. But mystery thriller and horror for me are kind of like the same genre. So Small Space is going to count for that. That's The Old Trails Bookstore and Shaw and Shank Legitimate Retailer. We're going to be reading Small Spaces for, hopefully. And then Occult Premonitions is to read a sci-fi. And that's why Brandon Sanderson made it onto this TBR. This actually, for a TBR, doesn't look that daunting. It actually looks like a really nice TBR. Speaking as when you take in time the date I'm filming this video, I've already made a decent chunk in the way through Ordinary Monsters. And I'm hoping to just essentially smash out these books before Christmas. But we will see. This is definitely actually really doable. At least for a physical TBR. The ebooks, I think we're going to read those slowly but surely, but they'll get read any other way. Whether or not I have to move them over into the next month is a different story. But yeah, this is my TBR for the month of December. So, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel down below for more bookish content from me. Comment down below what you guys are planning on reading in the month of December, and I would love to hear what books you put on your Christmas list this year. I put on quite a number of books on my Christmas list, and I'm hoping to give you guys a nice, juicy, big Christmas book haul this year after Christmas, once Christmas is over, and I have all my Christmas gifts. So, look forward to that video coming. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and remember, we are the one within the all.